Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights, where I am your host, Matthew Reardon. And this is the week. This is Thanksgiving. This is rivalry week. Two of my favorite things, football and eating food. I feel like you guys probably all feel the same exact way as me. Can't go wrong with food and football. It just, since the beginning of time, I think it's just always been intertwined. But rivalry week and Thanksgiving, it's bound to be a very stellar week and weekend. So I hope everyone does have a great Thanksgiving. But first, I want to introduce my hosts here. First, I've got David Street.
What's up, y'all?
And lastly, I've got Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
So, yes, just like I said, Thanksgiving, rivalry week. And when you know it's rivalry week, one thing comes to mind. It is the end of the college football regular season. And what comes with that? Well, you should kind of have a name or two in mind of who's going to win that Heisman. Of course, there's many things to really pay attention to because you do have a lot of championship weekends coming up where you have the Pac-12 champion can decide who makes the college football playoffs, the last spot, hopefully. And then you've got all these other awards that are going to be handed out too. But the Heisman is one of those that everyone pretty much keeps their eye on the entire season. But usually by now, you kind of have a front runner in mind, but anything could happen. And that's exactly what's happening this year. After this last weekend, it sounds like it's almost coming down to two names right now, and that is Bo Nix with the Oregon Ducks and Jaden Daniels with LSU Tigers. And there's a lot of controversy that comes with that, with the latter name. But I will say it first and foremost that Jaden Daniels is having a fantastic year. There is no discrediting that. But does he belong in the Heisman finalist category or the front runner? And if you have not seen, the betting odds have just now came out today on Monday, and now the new favorite is Jaden Daniels, where on Sunday it was Bo Nix. Bo Nix was the heavy favorite, but now all of a sudden bets are swinging the way of Jaden Daniels. And why is that? And here's my thing. The old timers would never let that happen. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's because Jaden Daniels plays on a team that has 3 losses. And the only ones that have done it recently with that amount of losses, RG3 with Baylor, Tim Tebow with Florida, and Lamar Jackson with Louisville. Before then, that did not happen. So that's why I say the old timers, they don't want that to happen. They don't probably even want to vote for him, but it still may happen. So Bo Nix is having a fantastic year, and I absolutely love, especially being an Oregon Duck fan, all that he's doing. He's being a facilitator out there on the field. He is the commander, the general of our offense. And I do think he deserves to have this award, but the season's not over yet. We still have another week, and then if we win this game, we will play Washington for the Pac-12 championship game. So there is still more to come, but when it comes to betting odds, it is either Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels. So I do think that it is up for controversy, and a lot of people are going to have their own opinions. I do think Jaden Daniels is having a fantastic year. I do think his name does deserve to be up there, but does it deserve to be up there more than the likes of Michael Penix Jr., who has an undefeated team, who his name every single week is being talked about? Bo Nix with 1 loss. That even that 1 loss can be an asterisk to some people, could be a deterring factor. But the end of the day, right now, those are the 2 betting favorites. Will the voters see it like that? We won't know until the Heisman is announced. But Ed, I think you want to add a couple things in how you interpret it, and should Jaden Daniels even be in consideration?
Well, I have a feeling, Matthew, you're calling me an old head by saying that Jaden Daniels doesn't belong in the Heisman conversation as far as a winner. Is he one of the best quarterbacks in the country? There is no question. If you look at his stat line, it's the highest QBR in the country at 94.9. He's got a 36-4 touchdown to interception ratio. against the SEC, some of the meanest defenses in the country. But looking at a couple things here, his best win was against what is now a number 10 Missouri. So the only loss that Missouri has had so far this season. His worst loss was against Alabama, 42-28. So overall, he's 1-3 against top 25 opponents. That is not enough Heisman relevant moments to be considered for the Heisman. Part of the Heisman is how well you look on SportsCenter. There's no denying that portion of it. Has he been fantastic and made highlight plays? Absolutely. But his team is not keeping up with his productivity, and he has not been the difference in them making those wins. When you look at Penix Jr., with their team being 11-0, their best win, obviously Oregon, number 6 in the country. They have ranked wins against Arizona, Oregon, Utah, and Oregon State. So that's 4-0 versus Jaden Daniels 1-3. Winning is a big part of playing quarterback, not just their stat line. So that's a big part of it. Bo Nix, he is he's got a huge stat line as well. His best win was at Utah. So his ranked wins are Utah and USC, and the one loss at Washington. So he's going to have a chance to avenge that. If he avenges that and has a tremendous stat line in that game and is the difference of Oregon getting over the hump of Washington, I think he wins a Heisman. If Washington beats Oregon again, I think Michael Penix Jr. wins the Heisman. In the end, it is those Heisman moments that make a difference. When you look at some of these comparisons about a 3-loss Heisman winner, a lot of people will look at Caleb Williams from last year. One of the big takeaways I have from that is the voting was done before the Pac-12 championship game, of which they lost, and they lost the bowl game. So he was a 3-loss Heisman winner, but 2 of those losses were after the Heisman was already, packaged and headed for Southern California. You look at Robert Griffin III in 2011, he had a top 5 win and a top 2 close game in that season, even though they wound up being 10-3 overall. So Jaden Daniels has not had that level of success as a win as what RG3 did in his year of winning. So in the end, they've got to have those Heisman favorable moments in those big games against top flight competition. Jaden Daniels, while he has had top flight highlight moments, they're not Heisman relevant moments. And that, I think that is the difference here.
Yeah, it is a big difference. I do agree to that. And there's only so much I feel like Jane Daniels could do as far as being a quarterback. He's not going to go out there and play cornerback for them on their defense, which he probably could be better than any of their cornerbacks out there because their defense is just that bad. I do feel that he has done a lot to keep them in games, especially like Ole Miss game. I mean, that game was such a thriller because it was all offense, no defense. But that's what does become a driving factor is, well, he's 1-3 against ranked teams this year. And yes, he has done a lot, but at the end of the day, it's not going to look like that because he is 1-3 against those teams. And I do think, like I said, he is a fantastic quarterback who has amazing talent, and I can't wait to see if that translates to the next level. But when it comes down to it, that Pac-12 championship game can possibly decide not only who goes to the playoff, but who wins the Heisman. So it's a very big, important game, just like the rest. But David, I mean, do you agree with these arguments? Where's your stance?
I can understand your arguments, but ultimately I don't agree with them because you talk about, wins being important, and they definitely are. Don't get me wrong, but also look at it like this. Where would LSU be without Jane Daniels? Because if anything, without Jane Daniels, they would have more than 3 losses. I guarantee you that. A team's offense and a team's defense is not on the field at the same time. So it's a little unfair to, put the trash defense on the Daniels. I don't think you're doing that. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. But Jaden Daniels is number one, and if not every major quarterback category, at least the vast majority of them. And like I said, LSU would be a lot worse than what are they now? 8-3. Yeah, 8-3. Without Daniels. But here's the other thing too, gentlemen. Okay, I can at least respect your opinions because I know that you're being fair. But who is not fair? Some clown who goes by the name of John Canzano. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I've noticed that Heisman voters are just some of the most insufferable, egotistical clowns out there. So he had a tweet. I can't remember if it was yesterday or a couple days before, where he said, "Stop with the Jaden Daniels Heisman hype." He'd hold a clipboard at Oregon and Washington, at both Oregon and Washington. Naturally, he got pushback. And when someone replied to him, Daniels should be the favorite, he says, Canzano replies, he wouldn't start at Oregon and he would sit at UW. Listen, nobody has a problem if you don't vote for Daniels or Penix or whoever, okay? You're entitled to your opinion, and if you can explain rationally why you won't vote for that person, nobody will have a problem. Like if you had just simply said, I think Jane Daniels is a fantastic quarterback, but I can't vote for someone who has 3 losses. Ultimately, I don't think that's fair, in my opinion, but it's a heck of a lot better than the outright disrespect that he's showing. And what on earth does he mean when he says that he wouldn't start at Oregon and he would sit at UW? Like, has this moron not checked strength of schedule? Because LSU has the number one schedule in the country. They have the toughest schedule in the country. I don't remember what Oregon's and Washington's are, but I think they're out of the top 10. So like I said, if you don't think Daniel should be the winner, okay, fine. But don't be a clown about it, man.
Jaden Daniels is the reason why the Davy O'Brien Award exists. He is 100% going to win the Davy O'Brien Award as the best quarterback in the country. But that does not mean he needs to be the Heisman winner. The Heisman winner, in my opinion, is somebody that can take a team, put them JanSport style on your back, and take them to the finish line in those big moments that a Davy O'Brien Award winner is not able to accomplish.
Well, David, you brought up a great point of if you were to unplug Jaden Daniels from that team, how well would they do? And with me, I'm thinking, well, what if you were to take out Malik Neighbors and then Brian Thomas Jr. and you kept Jaden Daniels there? Would he be able to perform the same? Where I think people then separate themselves are the people that have won it with 3 losses, like Lamar Jackson, RG3. Can you name a receiver on any of those teams? If you're a sports fan, you probably can if you're a diehard, but for the most part, it's not remembered. Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. will be in the NFL playing along the likes of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, who are also LSU duos at receivers. And that's where I think it really separates. Look at Cam Newton with Auburn. Gosh, you can't really name a whole lot of other people on that offense because that was all him. And that is why he won the Heisman. When it becomes evident that that is the player that just is above and beyond everyone else out there, even if you took all their receivers, their weapons away, they would still find a way to win. And I do think Jaden Daniels does have that talent, especially with his legs. But at the end of the day, I think also it could be a deterring factor of him having 2 of the best receivers on his team as well, because a lot of times I feel like they look at these Heismans as the one and only on that field. So, but that does kind of bring me to another topic here. Some of the best wide receiver rooms in the country here, because right now there are some studs out there, and a lot of them are ranked to go in the first round of the draft this year. And it just seems like they keep coming. David, Washington Huskies. What are we looking at out there? Because they got some trees out there, and I'm not talking about them redwoods.
Yes. Well, Washington has got some studs at wide receiver. So let's go over them. So their main go-to guy is Rome Odunze, who's got 66 receptions, 1,206 receiving yards, and 11 receiving touchdowns. So against current AP top 25 teams, so teams that are ranked right now, not if they were ranked before, I don't really play that game, but AP 25 teams that are ranked right now, he's averaging 99.3 receiving yards per game, and he's got 4 touchdowns. Now, against teams with winning records overall, he's averaging 103.8 receiving yards per game, and he's got 7 touchdowns against teams with winning records. Okay. Now, let's look at the other wide receiver that the Huskies got, Jalen Polk. He's got 55 receptions, 943 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns. His numbers against stronger competition doesn't really match up with Odunze, but that's not a knock against Polk at all, as Odunze has clearly been the go-to guy for Washington. Although I should note that Polk does have 118 receiving yards against your Ducks, Matthew, and a touchdown. I might add. I don't know if I had said that. Washington's receivers, by the way, they lead the country in receiving yards, which is not surprising because Washington leads the country in passing yards. So naturally, they're going to lead in receiving yards as well. And here's a fun fact. Washington is one of the only 3 schools in the country to have 2 wide receivers in the top 25 for receiving yards. The other schools are LSU and James Madison. And you know what all those schools have in country? They all sport the color purple. So deep threats from purple teams, just call it deep purple. Sorry,
Yeah.
I had to.
Yeah. Well, with Rome Odunze, being a Ducks fan, watching him out there, you always hear of the 50-50 ball. When that ball is heading his direction, it's more like a 90-10 ball because 9 times out of 10, he's coming down with that ball. And it is nice to have a weapon like that on your team. And Michael Penix Jr., he's got that weapon. So it's very fortunate for him, for both of them, because from the receiver standpoint, it is great to have a quarterback that's slinging it in there like he does too. So they're very fortunate to have each other, and it shows each and every game when you look at those stat lines. But a school that I want to talk about, and it's kind of almost becoming like wide receiver U, and that is LSU, just like you talked about with the deep purple. And I can't keep my eyes off of watching Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. play every Saturday, because it is explosion after explosion after explosion. And it's not necessarily deep passes. You're looking at slants that are being taken to the house, because yards after contact or yards after catch is a big thing for them. But when I was watching the game this last weekend, this LSU game, and yes, I was watching it even though it wasn't a big primetime matchup, had a little ulterior motives to it because Jaden Daniels is my fantasy quarterback in fantasy football. So it is nice to have someone like that. But watching
the truth comes out.
It does just a little bit. But I was flipping back and forth between several games. But watching those receivers out there, and the announcers even try to catch up with them. It was amazing. The announcers, they were baffled when they even put up the graphic of showing how much Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors are outperforming Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson when they were there at LSU, and they had Joey B as their quarterback. So it was just baffling to see that they are outperforming them on pretty much every single metric out there. And just listen to these stats right now combined, just the 2 of them. They have over 135 catches, 2,445 yards, and 26 touchdowns. Just the 2 of them. It's amazing. They released the top 10 semifinals for the Blitnikoff Award today, which is for the top receiver in college football. And whose 2 names were on there? Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., the only school to have 2 semifinalists this year. So that just shows you how amazing they are. And it goes beyond them too. I mean, they've got Kyron Lacey, who is a solid number 3 receiver who would probably be a number 2 or number 1 at other programs. But that's just how far their depth is. But that just is how great their 1 and 2 combo is. And if you talk to them and you listen to what they have to say in that LSU locker room, press conferences, you think Malik Neighbors when you see him, he's just such a freak out there, but they say Brian Thomas Jr. is probably the most talented player any of them have ever seen. And NFL scouts agree. This guy is going to be a problem in the NFL. And it just sounds like a trend that's happening over and over and over again with LSU wide receivers. From Odell Beckham Jr. to Jarvis Landry when they were there together. And as I mentioned before, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. All of them have gone to the NFL and everyone knows their names. And I expect the same thing with these two. But there are 2 more names out there that I think are also going to be heard on every Sunday. And they attend the University of Texas. And none other better than Texas Ed is what we like to call him on the side, but Ed Smith to go over that.
Absolutely. So if you couldn't tell, I've got some burnt orange blood in my veins. And when it comes to Xavier Worthy, he is our number 1 receiving threat. He is the most explosive player on our team. You know, when he announced his presence with authority in the Red River rivalry last year, 2 years ago, actually, when he took the first play from scrimmage, 80 yards for a touchdown, he has been the guy in the wide receiver room for Texas. You know, so far this year, we're talking 63 receptions at 834 yards and 4 touchdowns. You know, he's also our punt returner right now because he's so electric and so dynamic at making moves, making people miss, having the explosion to get to the second level. And he's got a punt return touchdown as well. You know, that is the guy for Quinn Ewers to go to when he is not seeing a whole lot available out there. He can just kind of fall back into some bad mechanic issues and just chuck it toward Xavier Worthy, and he's going to come down with it. That's just how that offense kind of works. The guy that's on the other side from him is Adonai Mitchell, formerly AD Mitchell, before he transferred in this year from Georgia last year. He's the number 2 guy, and all he does is catch touchdowns. You know, out of 43 receptions, he's got 9 touchdowns and 669 yards. He was a great addition to the Longhorn program to take the pressure off of Xavier Worthy on the other side. And when you have a number 3 like Kyle Whittingham, who is a culture guy, it just kind of brings it all together. You know, he is a guy that came back for his senior year just to win the Big 12 championship. You know, so you tie all those together, and you've got some other guys in that wide receiver room like Savion Red, who has become our Wildcat quarterback, or Red Cat, if you will. And he's been just a Swiss Army knife. You know, so talking about 4 different guys here that really make up a cohesive unit. And I haven't even talked about our top 3 tight end, Jatavian Sanders. So there's a lot of passes to go around in the Texas wide receiver room, but it's not just that. They have been blocking downfield. They've been doing the dirty work. They have been doing the things that make explosive plays, not just catch the ball and look at the camera. You know, they have been the guys that while Quinn Ewers was down, they helped carry the offense with our redshirt freshman quarterback, Malik Murphy, taking the reins, just allowing him to do as little as possible to maintain the ship, you know, not let the ship sink on his watch. The wide receiver room carried the offense during that time frame, along with the running back, Jonathan Brooks, who's hurt now. But as I mentioned before, they have helped the running game by being those downfield blockers, by being those culture guys in and around the program. So yes, we're going to see these guys at the next level. But right now, I believe that Texas has one of the top 3 or 4 wide receiver rooms in the country, and not just their numbers, but their attitude, their buy-in, and their abilities in and around and on and off the field really make the difference here.
Yeah, this is really a topic up for discussion. We could probably go on more and more about this, but I'd like to hear what you fans would have to say and who you think has the number one wide receiver room in the country and who you think is possibly the number one wide receiver in the country, because we just listed off several names, but we didn't talk of the likes of Marvin Harrison Jr. We didn't talk about Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Troy Franklin. I mean, there are so many people out there. Luther Burden with Missouri. There are some studs out there that could easily be drafted in the first round that could play a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in the NFL if you drafted them tomorrow. That's just how good they are. And the legacies, that's one thing that I'm loving. I mean, like I mentioned, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know about you guys, but every Sunday, 88, I had my eyes on him every Sunday because he was amazing for Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts. And then we've got Jerry Rice's son too, playing at USC. I mean, it's legacy after legacy after legacy that is happening right now in front of our eyes. But more than that, you're seeing a lot of people come out of nowhere too. So many names out there, and I would not want to be on the opposing team against them. I would not want to be that cornerback. But you know who else I wouldn't want to be? I would not want to be that guy that's on Street's corner. David Street right there. David, go ahead. Let us know who's on David Street's corner this week.
Let's talk about the ending to the Florida-Missouri game, right? Florida 5-2 at one point, looking like we are a lock to make a bowl at least, and now we've lost 4 straight. The wheels have completely fallen off. It's just been a painful existence as a Gator fan. And of course, the way that things ended with Missouri certainly didn't help matters at all. Now, Billy got ripped to pieces for going for the field goal there instead of, going for the kill shot with the touchdown. Now, admittedly, I didn't really care at the time. I was just happy to be ahead, right? But let me tell you, when I look back at it, Billy going for the field goal was absolutely the right decision, and here's why. You're on the road against the top 10 team with a backup quarterback who, by the way, already had a fumble before, right? So if Billy calls a pass play and Max Brown, our backup quarterback, intercepts it, Billy more than likely gets grilled even harder. People are going to say, well, Billy, what were you thinking after Max already turned it over before? And then people are probably going to say, well, I mean, not probably. They have been saying he shouldn't have put the game on the defense, which has been awful. Listen, I don't care if it's a group of preschoolers or if it's a group of senior citizens. 4th and 17. 4th and freaking 17. There is absolutely no excuse whatsoever to make a stop there, right? But you leave their number one guy completely uncovered. You don't do anything. You don't do a damn thing. Defense doesn't do its job. It lets us down once again, right? Defense does its job, then we don't talk about the call that Billy had made. And let me tell you, as the season comes to a close, I find it very, very hard to blame Billy in the offense when it's becoming more and more obvious that the problem has not been the offense. I'm not saying the offense is elite by any stretch, okay? But the problem has been the defense. And in fact, there's been 2 games this year where the offense scored at least 30, right? The team was ahead at one point, but we still lost. And by the way, those 2 games have been 2 over the last 3 games, Arkansas and Missouri. Florida's defense does its job there. We moved to 7-4, and we're bowl eligible. But once again, our defense can't do anything right. And listen, people have their minds made up about Billy, and that's fine. But I just don't see how you can look at what's been happening, especially the Missouri game, and I don't see how you can pin the blame on him. Again, a backup quarterback on the road against the top 10 team, okay? A backup quarterback who already turned the ball over And if you're going to sit here and tell me that you wouldn't criticize Billy if he called a pass play and Max Bryant intercepted it, you are a damn liar. And I don't want to hear it from you. All right. But listen, man, it's just we're bound for our third straight losing season. I know FSU is down to its backup quarterback as well, and I do hope Jordan Travis makes a swift recovery. That sucks what happened with him, but I still think FSU is the stronger overall team than we are. But we'll see what happens there. But Ed, Alan, man, what do you think? I think Billy made the right call going for the field goal with our backup quarterback. I thought it was the right decision, but what do you think?
Well, you've heard me say on this show several times that part of coach's job is mitigating the damage. So, you take points wherever you can and you move on and do what you can after that. So I have no issue with him taking points. There are ways to work the game in your favor, if the players make plays. Players got to play. Coaches can only do so much. But, what the coach has already done his job as far as making points available for the team. The players got to go make plays to put themselves in the next position to get the next round of points. It's not a matter of, overdoing it, because, you've heard from me several times. I hate when coaches overdo it as far as going for fourth downs and things of that nature. That just takes the ball, and gives yourself a coin flip in a sense. Are you going to do well or are you not going to do well? How about you mitigate the damage, get your points, and then put yourself in position for a later score? But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, there's a reason why us fans are on the couches watching the games and not on the sidelines calling the games. Don't get me wrong, there are probably some fans out there that would make better coaches than the likes of Brian Harsin, okay? But there are, and that doesn't mean that there are some coaches out there that just aren't god awful, okay? There are, but there's a reason why Billy Napier is there, and I do think he made the right call, because let's just say he went for it, didn't get it. Those same fans that were just calling for his head for going for a field goal would have been calling for his head. Why didn't you go for a field goal? That's what it is to be fans. We don't know what to do with our emotions. We're like going through puberty all over again. But that's just how it is, because you could do one thing, we'll love you. You could do the other thing, we'll hate you, and vice versa. But I do think Billy made the right call, especially with the backup quarterback. And their offense did look, pretty decent out there. I loved how much they were using ETN. But at the end of the day, it was your backup quarterback who has not done any first team reps, and getting the points should be the go-to thing. And that's exactly what he did. At the end of the day, it ended up being the defense that really did cause the game for them, and it wasn't Billy Napier's going for the field goal. If they missed the field goal, that's kind of a little different story, but at the same time, no, that's kind of on the kicker. But I think he made the right call, but fans will always never be satisfied unless we're undefeated, with the Heisman, won the championship. Look, Joe Burrow, okay? All right, it's like if we're an LSU fan that year, we're happy because everything went right. But Florida, they do have one more chance against Florida State. Florida State is a great team, but like you said, it is very tough what happened with Jordan Travis, especially as a senior with the season that he's been having. Gosh, that was horrible. I can't even come to understand that feeling, but it's unfortunate, and I hope Florida State continues to have a great year. Don't punish them because their quarterbacks are. That's all I'll say there. But who we can punish, not us personally, but the organizations, is head coaches in the NFL, because it's not only college football. NFL's got a coaching carousel going on right now, and I like to call this segment "Rehire or Fire," because there are many head coaches right now that it's up for discussion. We going to rehire them, or are we going to fire them? We're just going to let them go. So, Ed, who's going first?
First, I'm going to bring up Brandon Staley of the Chargers. I
Oh,
I
this is
think
gonna
we all know what the final answer on this one is, but let me just back it up with a couple of things. Over 3 seasons, he has 23-21 with one playoff game and no wins. He got to that playoff game because he has top talent at the quarterback position that he is largely wasting. I think we all think Justin Herbert is playing well below what he could with a better offense and head coach. He became the head coach by having the number one ranked defense with the Las Vegas Raiders. Well, since he's become the head coach at Los Angeles, his team is number 26 in the NFL over 3 seasons. That's just not going to get it done. That's falling into the LSU trap of trying to outscore everybody and not stop anybody in return. So that's just way too much. I mean, his play calling is way overly aggressive, just like I've talked about forever. In the end, he's got to go. Fire. And Matthew, who you got next?
Yeah, I got Frank Wright with the Carolina Panthers, and I think it's needless to say, Wright is not the right guy. This was kind of, I feel like, a premature hire. I just don't see him being the guy that's going to help get their quarterback Bryce Young really where he needs to be. I actually have a candidate that I think would be perfect for the head coaching job there. And I don't know why he decided to not go for a head coaching job this last year. Instead, he went for another offensive coordinator job. And that's Eric Bieniemy. I think he needs to get out of Washington. He deserves a head coaching job, and I think he would be the perfect fit there. So if you didn't guess it by now, Frank Reich is out, but I think that they need a new, fresh face there, and I think Eric Bieniemy would be the perfect fit for Bryce Young because they have added several pieces there with their offense, with bringing in Adam Thielen, who is a great receiver when healthy. Hayden Hurst at tight end, we saw what he was able to do up in Cincinnati. I think that they can be a great team, but Frank Reich is not the guy. They're 1-9 on the year. I'm thankful that they aren't benching Bryce Young. Of course, I want him to stay healthy, but I think Frank Reich does need to go. So for me, he's out. But David, this one may hit a little close to home here, and let the audience know how you really feel.
You are right, Matthew. This does hit close to home, okay? Because this is Todd Bowles, the head coach of my NFL team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And guys, let me tell you, when people show you who you are, believe them. And Todd Bowles, he's just not a good head coach, okay? He's got just one winning season as a head coach. And by the way, this does not count his 2-1 record with the Dolphins back in 2011, I believe, where he went 2-1 as an interim, okay? And by the way, his one winning season as a full-time head coach was his first season when he went 10-6 with the Jets as a first-year head coach. But since then, he has gone 26-48. That is simply unacceptable, all right? And he's only made the playoffs once in his career when the Bucs won a horrible NFC South last year. His record against winning teams as a head coach, like Tampa Bay's record against winning teams under Todd Bowles' leadership from last year up to this season right now, 4-10. Defense, which by the way is Todd Bowles' specialty, is giving up just above 24 points per game against winning teams. And in the last 8 games against winning teams, we are giving up about 28 points per game. Okay. He is not the guy at all. And I've said it before on the show, and I will say it again. I will always thank him for his play calling in the Super Bowl, because I firmly believe that we do not win the Super Bowl without his incredible play calling. Okay. And that's just the thing. He's a great defensive coordinator. But it is so clear, like, if it wasn't clear then, it should be clear now that Todd Bowles is not a good head coach. And I doubt he'll be fired right now, but after the season is over, he has to go.
Totally get you on that one, David. I'm going to go with Antonio Pierce, the interim coach from the Raiders. Most people know him as part of the 2007 Super Bowl winning Giants defense. He's just stepped in the last 3 games after replacing Josh McDaniels, who was gone after 8 games because Josh McDaniels was garbage through the first half of the season. So, the Raiders are not only at an interim head coach, they're also at an interim GM because they have holes on their roster that they thought that they were fixing in the offseason with some free agent signings like a Jimmy Garoppolo, things like that. They have Max Crosby. They have Devontae Adams, but they have nothing as far as a solid, foundational head coach. So right now, just very short amount of time, I'm in the TBD to be determined camp, but I'll give him another year. Let's rehire him, see what he can do as far as creating that culture, because he knows what it looks like, and if he can bring that to Las Vegas and instill it into the Raiders organization that I don't know if they've really had for a very long time, then he's certainly worth the risk to go ahead and let's rehire him.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, David.
Yeah, sorry. Well, real quick, Ed, you talk about how they have holes that they thought they plugged in. Doesn't it seem like every single year the Raiders win the offseason or they're a top 5 offseason team? We killed the draft. We got what we needed. Things are going to be different this time. Nope.
Pieces mean nothing if you don't have a core to attach them to.
Bingo.
Absolutely. I can't remember his name for the life of me right now, but after the whole John Gruden mess in Vegas, their interim coach that they had then was who Vegas wanted. You asked the players, you asked the fans, they never rehired him. They end up going the Josh McDaniels route, but that's who they really should have stuck with. And now I think they're probably regretting that. But at the end of the day, it's kind of the Raiders right now. That's really what they do. But I do think it's a to be determined.
I think he had an Italian last name, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
but I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah, if you guys remember, put it in the comments later on. I'll go ahead and put it in there too. But yeah, he is who they really wanted. But the one I've got right now is a very interesting one. Some may consider him the GOAT, and that is Bill Belichick. He is a phenomenal head coach for the New England Patriots, but he's not this year. And that could just be lack of talent, or maybe he's just not into it anymore. But I'm going to throw out some names here. Willie Mays, Joe Montana, Tom Brady. What do they all have in common besides being in the GOAT talk? They were amazing with one team, and at the end of their careers, they went to another team, and it was shocking. I mean, Willie Mays went to the Mets, Joe Montana went to the Chiefs, and then Tom Brady, he went to the Bucks, and he won a Super Bowl. He won a Super Bowl with the Bucks.
I have against Tom Brady.
Yeah, and it was funny. Tom Brady was just lovable then. Everyone hated Tom Brady when he was with the Patriots. I mean, I know I did, but he went to the Bucks, and all of a sudden he was loved again. But that brings, though, a point up. It was always a talk of discussion. Well, is Tom Brady better because he had Bill Belichick, or vice versa? Well, Tom Brady left and won a Super Bowl. Bill Belichick, since Tom Brady has been gone, yes, he's made the playoffs, but that's been about it. He has not done a whole lot since. And there's a lot of rumors of, could he possibly go to a different team? I think that he should hang it up. I think he's had a phenomenal career, and he will go down as, if not the best, one of the best coaches of all time, regardless of the fact of what's happened after Tom Brady left. But I just keep hearing, oh, he may go to the Chargers. They're going to have an opening. And it's like, I think that he had his fit with New England, with Tom Brady there, everything. And I just think that at the end of the day, he should hang up his, well, it's not really cleats. He should hang up his sleeveless sweater, I think, is more formal. And just kind of call it a day and ride off into the sunset, just like a lot of people think Nick Saban should do. But sometimes when you're the best, you stick around just because you want more. But I do think that he should retire, not necessarily get fired.
Yeah, and you say that you talk about lack of talent. Well, you know who is also New England's general manager? Bill Belichick. Okay, so this lack of talent that they have right now is his fault. So maybe fire him as the general manager, but keep him as the head coach at least.
They could talk about things. They need to, because there's going to be a new direction, whether that's with him or without him. So it'll be something that's talked about at the end of the year, and we'll see come middle of the offseason, if not the beginning of next season.
Absolutely. Well, next up, guys, I've got the head coach of the Washington Commanders, Ron Rivera, who, of course, was previously the head coach for the Carolina Panthers. Now, at Carolina, he was a very solid 76, 63, and 1. Now, having Cam Newton as his quarterback certainly helped, but Ron Rivera being a defensive guy, right? Carolina had some very, very solid defenses under Ron Rivera. So I think Rivera deserves a lot of credit for Carolina's success. But he hasn't found that same success with the Commanders. Since taking over the job in 2020, he's gone 26, 34, and 1. Now, Washington has had some really good defenses under Rivera, but this year it's been downright horrible, right? So Ron Rivera's playing card being defense, well, he doesn't even have that going for him. But also, it should be noted as well that Ron Rivera really hasn't had consistent quarterback play since coming to the DC area. I mean, he had Alex Smith, right? He had Taylor Heineke. He also at one point had Dwayne Haskins. May he rest in peace. But this year, he's got Sam Howell, who leads the NFL in passing yards and has 18 passing touchdowns, but he does have 12 interceptions, which is tied with Josh Allen for most in the league. But also, in fairness to Sam Howell, I believe this is also his first full-time season as a starter, right? Now, I don't think Rivera will lose his job. As I said before, quarterback play has been inconsistent. And really, before Howell, the best quarterback that Ron Rivera had was Taylor Heineke. And you're not going to go far with Taylor Heineke unless you're just absolutely loaded at the skill positions and in the trenches, right? Now, he seems to have his quarterback in Sam Howell, but it should be noted that Howell was a 5th-round quarterback. So I'm not really sure what Washington's future plans are with him, but he is showing some promise right now. As I said before, he leads the NFL in passing yards, and he's got 18 touchdowns. But he's got some messes that he needs to clean up, like with his NFL leading 12 interceptions. Well, he's tied for the most interceptions, but you get my drift. So no, I don't think Ron Rivera should be fired. I think he's more than proven himself, and I think he'll be back for at least another year. I think he should get another shot.
So that's a rehire for Ron Rivera. Okay. I am going to throw in a name, Matt Eberflus, if that's even how you say it, because that is a weird name in my opinion, but who am I to judge? So he is the head coach of the Bears. Me being a Packers fan, I want him to stay there as long as possible because he's only 6-22 in 2 seasons. That is garbage coaching for an organization that is really trying to gather the fan base back. With their downtown stadium issues, they're probably looking at getting a stadium built that's out of the Chicago downtown area, off into the suburbs, which I know the people of Chicago want to keep everything in downtown just because that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it is. But when you're talking about a team that has had the high expectations going into 2023 with Justin Fields having his second season, which he took the league by storm last year with his legs. not so much reading the defenses, and throwing the ball over the yard, but he was able to kind of carry the offense uh, in the rushing category. In fact, I think he was close to 1,000 yards. You might want to check me on that. As a quarterback, so he was basically doing NFL offense in a college way, because college offenses, you'll see 1 to 2 reads and then take off. That's the way he was doing NFL, and he is fast enough and athletic enough to make that go, but that's not a long-term solution. So it was on Matt Eberflus and to develop him over the offseason, and it just did not happen. The front office went out and got some high price free agents. Nothing happened. It's not any different than it was last year. He needs to go. He's fired. He is out of there, mister. Um, you know, and there's really not much more you can say about Eberflus's, future in Chicago, unless they really just want to hang on to him until they can get that next big splash hire as they rebuild and revamp the entire organization top to bottom.
Yeah. And Ed, by the way, I just checked. You had it right. Justin Fields last year had 1,143 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, he was phenomenal with his legs. That's what kind of would keep the Bears in any games that they might have still been in, even though it was not a whole lot. But Justin Fields, that's kind of why they've given him such a long leash, because he hasn't really had anyone there that could help develop him more. But I do think Justin Fields can be an incredible talent, but with the coaching staff they have there now, that's not going to happen. So I agree with you, Ed, there. But I think everybody remembers, shoot, this was maybe over a decade ago. You were either Team Jacob or Team Edward. I'm sure you probably also remember playing crossword puzzles. But have you ever heard of the Edward? Well, our very own Ed Smith here is going to elaborate some more.
Appreciate it, Matthew. I'm using the Ed word to talk about Brett Yormark. I consider him the villain of college football. He's been a phenomenal hire if you're talking about the Big 12 conference, and try and keep it together. He is the 5th and current commissioner of the Big 12 conference, largely involved in the broadcast and marketing rights before becoming the Big 12 commissioner, mainly in the Northeast with a lot of the network TV deals for college sports in that region. Now, as a timeline, Texas and Oklahoma announced that they were leaving the Big 12 to join the SEC in July of 2021. Well, lo and behold, Yormark came in just after that. And when that occurred, he's kind of stepped in a way, in a position to where he had to find a way to bring the conference forward with losing basically the son of the Big 12, which everything revolves around Texas and Oklahoma. So as far as a PR standpoint, as far as a recognition standpoint, so he backfilled the conference with UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU. In October of 2022, he brokered the deal with ESPN and Fox on a 6-year term worth $2.2 billion that runs from 2025 to 2031. He led the charge to crumble the Pac-12 after USC and UCLA signed to become new members of the Big Ten. Using that leverage, he convinced Colorado to secede as well. So that was another chip that eventually had the entire house fall. Eventually, that led to him adding 4 more schools, which will be added to the Big 12 football schedule next year, and Colorado, Arizona State, and Utah. In August of this year at Big 12 Media Football Days, he announced that uh, that uh, he was actively rooting for Texas to lose to Texas Tech in the major national game over Thanksgiving weekend. You're rooting against a program that is still under your control, and that is just, to me, just petty and vindictive for him to do, especially when you look at the fact that Texas, with a win against Texas Tech, is guaranteed a spot in the Big 12 championship game with an opportunity to go to the college football playoff. He is going to be in town for that game, and he would rather lose the possible $10 million that the conference will gain by Texas being in the college football playoff. He would rather lose that and back the team that's still going to be here, which I totally get. You want to back the teams that are going to stick with you, but in the end, he is not really backing the teams that, on a year-to-year basis. He's backing the teams that, he has control over. And I don't think that's a good look as a commissioner for one of the Power 4 schools. The Big 12, will have an identity crisis, once Texas and Oklahoma leave. The remaining now 16 league member conference. To me, there's really only 3 clear favorites going into 2024. That's Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Utah. If somebody else comes up and surprises everybody, good on them. I'm looking forward to it. But those are the 3 programs that I think are stable enough to really take the reins and fill the void that's going to be left over. And looking ahead, the Big 12 is trying to stay relevant through volume, not substance. Maybe the changes as Texas and Oklahoma get out of the way, but maybe they cast some doubt on those teams that do well once Texas and Oklahoma leave because they weren't playing those teams. It's going to get interesting. Now, am I saying that Yorkman is Senator Palpatine, just pulling strings behind the Senate? No. What I'm saying is, in his short tenure, I mean, this is only a couple years he's been here. In the short tenure, he has now been part of a major shift in college athletics, collapsing one conference that was trying to survive, vindictively rooting against his own conference for national recognition, and part of the broadcasting rights that will change the college football playoff going forward. And one side note, I can't even figure out what these clarification of rules are in the tiebreaker scheme for the Big 12 championship, playoff. Texas has not officially secured their spot, but a win this week, there's no issue. But after that, right now you're looking at Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Iowa State still having an opportunity to be that second team. The Big 12 Commissioner's Office clarified the rules, and it seems to favor trying to keep Oklahoma out at the same time. So it just looks bad that your commissioner is creating this air of, you're leaving, so forget you. I'd rather use another F word and, just get out of here. Because in the end, this is a guy that was proud of the fact that he feels like he kicked them out at a year early from the contract that Texas and Oklahoma was willing to, adhere to. But, he's like, you're going anyway, so you just go. We don't care. Get out. And that to me is a terrible look as a Big 12 commissioner. But David, what do you think on that?
Well, I mean, I think that he definitely came across as unprofessional when he said that he would be rooting for Texas Tech, against Texas. But also, I have to admit, there is a small part of me that doesn't exactly, blame him because not only did Texas openly declare that they were going to go for the SEC, but if I remember correctly, and Ed, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong here, they practically bragged about it too. So it's like you made your bed, now lie in it. You can't be surprised when you openly brag about leaving the conference, and then you're now, he's still your boss, but he's going to be your former boss. You can't be surprised when he says, okay, well then go pound sand. But that's just my 2 cents there.
Yeah, he's like as saltier than David's sunflower seeds. It's just that's exactly how he's acting. He's acting like a little kid. And David there and Ed, there's a reason why you don't know what it means with these tiebreaker rules, because and I quote Chaz Michaels from Blades of Glories, no one knows what it means because it's provocative. But that's just really what it comes down to, is that he's just making up as he goes. I mean, he's got a little notepad there. All right, how can I do things? Well, let's just make it up as I go and I'll enforce it. And that's exactly what's happening right in front of our eyes. And it's like, really?
Yeah, I totally agree with. Totally agree. And David, I certainly get your point on that. Texas and Oklahoma, you know, they feel like going into the SEC is a step up in competition versus the Big 12. And that's really a function of what the Big 12 has been over the past 20 years. As I mentioned before, the 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 NCAA athletic world revolved around Texas and Oklahoma when it came to football, which is the biggest money maker in college athletics. So removing that, you know, there the Big 12 is kind of left floating in space, trying to adhere to something to make it relevant again. So that's where Yormark really, I will say, did a good job trying to get enough teams together to make themselves relevant. But his attitude toward, brokering this, getting this transition between Texas being in the conference and not being in the conference is just completely unprofessional. And I don't think it sets a good tone if any other program decides to either part ways with the conference or even ask for anything of the conference moving forward.
Yeah. Speaking of money makers, because as we know, college football is one of the top, but one of the actual top money making sports right now is Formula One. A lot of people don't follow it, but this last weekend, there was a lot of headlines with Formula One. I myself am a fan, and I am very much so interested in Formula One and what it has to offer. But coming into this weekend, it was the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and there was a lot of controversy because of the temperature. And when you think of Las Vegas and I say temperature, you're thinking hot, but it was actually the opposite. There was a lot of concerns due to how cold the track was going to be. For those of you who don't know, deserts at night do tend to get cold, and you're wondering, well, why is the race at night? Well, they thought to make more money and more viewers that they would want to appease more to the different countries instead of ours. So they wanted to start the race in the middle of the night. Well, they didn't care much so of driver safety when it came to that, because colder tracks means slicker tires. And if you haven't watched Formula One before, these cars move. So there was such controversy going into it. The drivers weren't happy. The constructors, the teams, they were not happy. And lo and behold, right in the first practice, it wasn't necessarily an accident based on temperature. There was a manhole cover that one of the racers ran over, and it completely damaged his car. And yes, damage happens with these practices a lot, and they have the best mechanics in the world just right at their hands. And that's what happened is there was damage to the engine. They had to rebuild it, and by doing so, they suffered a penalty. It doesn't seem fair, and that was Carlos Sainz with Team Ferrari, and they'll be the first to tell you that. Team Ferrari was just not happy because of that. They felt like this was an unforced error on their driver because of this manhole cover, yet they got penalized. Well, more so of Carlos Sainz got penalized, but Ferrari, though, they decided to, let's just keep going at it. And actually, within qualifying, they finished 1 and 2 with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, which was amazing because Carlos Sainz did rebuild his whole engine. I mean, they practically almost a new car at that point because of how much damage they had. But because of the penalty, he would start later on in the grid. But when it was all said and done, Mad Max the Magician, Max Verstappen, did come out with the victory, which is his 18th of the year, which is unheard of. It is phenomenal what he is doing out there. And I don't think people realize, yes, it's someone behind a wheel, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat that whatsoever, but the reflexes that these guys have to have in order to do this is unheard of. And it is really tremendous, the amount of skills that any of them have, let alone 18 wins in 1 year. So that, hats off to Max Verstappen. What he is doing is legendary, and he's already going down as probably the best just with his performances the last 2 years alone. But he did take one. Charles Leclerc, who did start out one, did finish second, so he's kept a lot of consistency there. And coming in third is Max Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez. So just like all year, Red Bull, they've just been controlling almost everything on the circuit. They are just too far out of reach for anyone when it comes to not only their drivers, but just their team, their constructors, their engineers. There's so many levels to this, but just the controversy that happened in Las Vegas, it really took the attention off of actually the race itself and the racers. The reason why this was such big controversy, not only Carlos Sainz running over the manhole cover, but because of the temperature. This was going to be the coldest track the entire year. And like I said, you don't hear that too often with Las Vegas, because when you hear of Vegas, you think hot, but that's just how cold it was down there. It's not like it was ice cold temperatures, but for a racing, it was cold conditions. So luckily no one got hurt, at least to my knowledge, but it's a very scary and dangerous sport. And I think that they should take that into more consideration instead of looking at those dollar signs in their eyes, cha-ching, cha-ching, because who knows what could have happened to these drivers out there if their safety is not being put first. Because as I'm hearing, they put safety first when it came to the fans and removing some of the fans, but it sounds like there is a lot of controversy and trouble with that. But it just didn't seem like they cared too much when it came to the drivers. They are professionals at the end of the day, and they did end up racing a good race, and no one got hurt, like I said, to my knowledge. So Formula One is wrapping things up with Abu Dhabi, I believe, is their last race coming up. So Max Verstappen has already won the championship there. So is Red Bull. There's just no one touching them. It's more so of the races from second on. So that just shows you how talented Max Verstappen is. He wrapped up the championship, I want to say, 4 races ago. So just shows you where he's at compared to the rest of the pack. But that's about pretty much all we have today, folks. Please hit that like, subscribe button, share, check out our website, AmericanDailyPress.com. We are on there. We are on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, you name it, we are there. So please check us out, let others know, and we always appreciate your feedback. That is first and foremost our priority, is hearing what you guys have to say, because you guys are what keeps us going. So please continue to do that, and we appreciate all that you do for us. So thank you guys. We will see you before then, but if we don't happen to say it, have a happy Thanksgiving, have a wonderful rivalry week, because this is when everyone starts bumping heads, because it is that rivalry week. We all know someone that is against our team, and just as much as we're against them. So till next time, guys, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.